Zach Orfman mourns the death of his girlfriend Beth, but when she comes back from the dead, he realizes that she's no longer the same person. Beth Slocum goes on a morning walk by herself. Days later, everyone mourns her death, especially her boyfriend Zach Orfman. After the funeral, Zach and his parents head to Beth's house, where they express their condolences to her bereaved family. Over the next few days, Zach gets depressed. He rarely talks and even loses his appetite. His parents do their best to provide emotional support, but when he needs a timeout, Zach visits Beth's parents, Maury and Jeannie. One night when he visits, he sees their maid, Pearline, leave the house with a suitcase. She expresses how she's had enough and even warns Zach not to go inside. Zach is confused, but Maury invites him to the house as soon as Pearline leaves. There, he sees Jeannie putting Beth's things away, lamenting how she didn't take enough pictures with her daughter. Just then, Maury recalls just how much Beth loved Jell-O. Later, Maury plays chess with Zach, and he tells him that he can casually call him by his first name. This makes Zach smile. As they continue playing, Zach shares that he has left his band and will probably never play music again. To make him feel better, Maury offers him a cigarette, which Zach refuses at first but ends up accepting later on. Just then, Zach shares that he and Beth had a fight before she died. However, Maury tells him that he should overlook the bad memories and focus on the good ones. Before Zach goes home, he asks Jeannie if he could have Beth's scarf. She agrees and he wears it on his way home. The following day, he goes back to the Slocums to give them some Jell-O, but no one seems to be home. Because of this, he places the Jell-O on their doorstep and leaves them a voicemail when he gets home. That night, Zach joins his parents for dinner and asks if the Slocums left him a message. They say no, and this makes him assume that they're avoiding him. Kyle, his brother who works as a policeman, speculates that he's doing something suspicious with the Slocums, and this pisses Zach off. He gets even more annoyed when his mother points out that he's wearing a scarf he's wearing during summer. Wanting some peace, Zach goes to his room, and his family continues dinner as if nothing's wrong. While in his room, he places Beth's scarf on his private area, but Kyle suddenly barges in and witnesses the scene. Zach tries explaining himself, but his brother abruptly leaves. The following day, Zach heads to the Slocums, but no one opens the door for him. Desperate, he trespasses and heads to the back door, where he sees Beth inside. He immediately tries calling her, and he bangs on every window and eventually the front door. Just then, Kyle arrives and yells at his brother for disturbing the Slocums. Zach argues that he saw Beth inside, but Kyle forces him to step away from the door or he'll mace him. Zach does as he's told. Then Kyle calls out to the Slocums to apologize. Maury replies from inside that everything's fine, which shocks Zach as this confirms that they're purposely ignoring him. Kyle escorts his brother back to their house, but later that night, Zach goes back to the Slocums. There, he forces himself inside despite Maury's protest, and to his surprise, he sees Jeannie trying to hide Beth in a closet. Suddenly, everyone starts arguing, but Maury and Jeannie can't explain the situation to Zach without revealing the truth to Beth. While Zach continues to believe that Beth faked her death, Maury and Jeannie try to act like everything is normal. Overwhelmed, Zach goes home and finds his family having dinner together. He bluntly says that Beth is alive, which earns him a trip to the neurologist the following day. That afternoon, he goes to Beth's grave and finds that someone dug it up. Because of this, he heads to the Slocums to talk to Maury. Maury reveals that he couldn't tell him the truth sooner because he's just as confused as he is. He explains that his daughter really died, but after Zach left the other night, Beth just rang the doorbell and returned home. The father believes that now she's back, nothing else matters. Hearing this, Zach loses his mind, thinking that Beth is a zombie. Just then, Jeannie walks into the room and says that Beth has been resurrected, and it was a miracle. Suddenly, Beth joins them, telling Zach to come with her to the attic. Though he hesitates to go with her, Maury pressures Zach to join Beth and tells her everything he wished he had told her before she died. In the attic, Beth is confused as to why everyone around her is acting weird. Zach asks her what she remembers, but Beth can't recall anything. Instead, she's just nervous about her test, although he corrects her that it's already summer break. Zach keeps asking her questions, which upsets Beth since she thinks he's being mean. He quickly apologizes and tells her just how much he loves her. This leads to a passionate kiss, but before things can escalate, Beth stops him since she doesn't want to do the deed while her parents are downstairs. With this, they plan on going on a walk, but Maury and Jeannie tell them not to go out in broad daylight. They recommend staying the day with them, then going hiking at night. However, when night comes, Maury and Jeannie discreetly restrict them from leaving. Beth suggests swimming in their pool instead, so Zach has no choice but to agree. At the pool, Jeannie keeps taking pictures of them. Meanwhile, Zach notices the bite mark on Beth's leg, still unhealed. However, he disregards this and goes swimming with her. The following day, Zach gets up in a good mood, which astounds his parents. After this, he goes out to head to Beth's, but runs into Chip, their old mailman who hasn't been around for a while. He hands him a bunch of letters, which Zach claims aren't theirs. However, Chip only leaves in haste. As soon as Zach gets to Beth's, he sees her gathering soil with her bare hands. This concerns him, so he urges Maury to tell her the truth. Despite his best efforts, Zach fails to convince Maury, and he's left with no choice but to respect that. Suddenly, Beth walks into the room and starts kissing Zach, then invites him on a hike. Despite Maury's protests, Beth still leaves with Zach. As soon as they get far from the house, Beth starts touching Zach, which excites him. Right away, they bust out of the car and start copulating outside in broad daylight. When they return to Beth's house, Maury gets infuriated when he sees his daughter's face sunburnt. Jeannie tries to calm him down, saying that they'll put aloe vera or makeup on it. However, this only angers Maury even more since she's tolerating the teens. He then tells Zach that they aren't allowed to go out again, but the guy rebuts and says that being honest will be better for everyone. Just as he triggers Maury into revealing the truth, Beth says she already knows, thinking that they're talking about her big test. Maury agrees with her, then he tells Zach to go home. That night, Zach secretly takes Beth to the beach. There, he performs a song that he wrote for her, which discreetly contains the truth about her death. However, Beth hates it and starts screaming while destroying the guardhouse. As she continuously gets aggressive, Beth pushes Zach to the ground. The guardhouse catches on fire and Beth suddenly loses her vision. She then pleads with Zach to help her, all while screaming her lungs out. Zach assists her back to the car, but she breaks the window when she gets inside. Beth doesn't seem to be able to control her actions, but when she hears smooth jazz playing on the radio, she calms down. When they finally make it back to her house, Beth kisses Zach. However, he gets thrown off by the smell of her mouth. He assists Beth to the attic, where she grabs a boombox that plays jazz music. However, Zach notices that the walls are covered in mud, so he attempts to leave. However, Beth pins him to the floor and gets aggressive again. This scares him, so Zach overpowers her, then bolts out. After this, he goes to a local diner where he meets Erica Wexler, the daughter of one of his mom's friends. She joins him for brunch and they talk about Beth. Zach is still bothered by the recent events, that he expresses how much he wishes Beth to stay dead. This concerns Erica, but Zach quickly explains that he's still mourning. He then goes on to compliment Erica's features, which is the exact opposite of Beth's decomposing self. Suddenly, Zach notices that the chef is being aggressive, and this reminds him of Beth. He asks Erica if she's noticed anything odd lately, but he quickly tells her not to mind what he just said. When Zach returns to his car, Beth appears out of nowhere, causing him to run over her. She gets stuck under the wheel, but when Zach helps her out, she's not injured. People have gathered around them, but Beth scares them off. As the two get into an argument, Erica calls out to Zach, and this threatens Beth. Because of this, she asserts dominance and introduces herself. Hearing her name, Erica asks Zach if she's another Beth, which infuriates Beth even more. Concerned, Erica asks if they should call the police, but Beth twists her arm. After Zach pries her off the woman, Erica desperately escapes. Beth demands an explanation from Zach, so he finally brings her to her grave. He explains that she died a week and a half ago, and for some unknown reason, she's alive again. She asks if she's been resurrected, but Zach believes that she's a zombie. This upsets her, but she's more relieved that there's no other Beth. Suddenly, Zach confesses that her existence is wrong and that she's not the same person anymore. This enrages Beth, so she pushes him and leaves with his car. That night, Zach goes home but gets greeted by their chaotic household. To his surprise, his grandfather also dug himself out of his grave, which causes Kyle to point his gun at everyone. As everyone freaks out, their grandfather excuses himself to go to the attic. Zach reassures everyone that it's normal, because people like him weirdly like the attics. Suddenly, someone rings the doorbell, and upon opening the door, they meet the old owners of the house, who also dug themselves out of their graves. Out of panic, Kyle shoots one of them, but this doesn't affect him. Meanwhile, Zach lies in a corner and tries to comfort himself. Just then, Maury calls him, telling him to meet him outside. Before he leaves, he tells his family to start packing so they can leave, but they're still confused about what's happening. Frustrated, Zach yells that the dead are coming back to life just as the power goes out. Outside, Zach sits in Maury's car, where the man tells him to convince Beth that she's not dead. Zach refuses to, but instead, he asks for Perline's address. She's Haitian, and Zach believes that she has some sort of ritual to fix everything. Despite not believing him, Maury promises to give him the address once he tells Beth that she's not dead. Refusing to do that, Zach tries to leave, but Maury starts driving and heads to his house. There, Beth is acting rogue, still infuriated with her last argument with Zach. Meanwhile, Zach asks Maury for Perline's address, but he refuses to give it to him. Overhearing their conversation, Jeannie volunteers to help by providing the address, which upsets Maury. After getting the address, Zach heads to his car, which is absolutely trashed. To his surprise, Beth is already seated inside, but he leaves with her anyway. When he arrives at Perline's apartment, he finds that she no longer lives there. However, her cousin does, and he reveals that Perline left the Slocums because Maury was pestering her to sleep with him. He also calls Zach out for being a bigot for assuming that all Haitians do voodoo. When Perline's cousin shuts the door, Zach sees a bare woman who seems like she escaped from the morgue. As he gets to his car, he finds Maury with Beth, and he's placed a sack over her head. Zach tries reasoning with him, but Maury hits him with a gun and drives away with his daughter. later. The next day, Zach wakes up to a zombie looming over him. Because of this, he cautiously goes to his car and drives home. However, he discovers that his house is a wreck and there's a pile of charred dead bodies by the pool, which he assumes are his family's. Right away, Zach packs his bags and brings Beth's photo with him. He then drives to the main town, where burning cars and dead bodies cascade on the streets. He takes a bunch of food from a local grocery store, but instead of escaping, he heads to Beth's house. When he gets there, he finds Jeannie feeding Beth with human flesh, while her daughter is chained to the stove. Beth bit a part of Jeannie's hand and has also eaten Maury. Zach quickly ties a piece of cloth around Jeannie's bleeding hand and tells her to go and save herself. He reassures her that he'll take care of Beth and that everything will be okay. When Jeannie leaves, Zach tries talking to Beth, but she remains feral. To catch her attention, he asks her to go hiking with him, and she instantly agrees. Just then, Beth stands up while carrying the stove on her back. However, when they get outside, Zach sees Kyle. Kyle points his gun at him, but he calms him down and asks why he's still alive when there were burnt bodies in their house. Kyle replies that their parents are alive and that they're with a family friend. However, he shot their grandfather in the head and this makes him break down in tears. Zach quickly comforts him. Then Kyle apologizes for not believing him about Beth sooner. Just then, Kyle reveals that he's now part of the resistance against the zombies. With this, he hands his gun to Zach and tells him to eliminate Beth. Zach vehemently refuses because he loves her, but his brother reminds him that she'll eat people and that she's suffering, so he has to end it. Soon after, Zach goes on a hike with Beth in the mountains. There, he tells her that he'll always love her. Although Beth is barely human at this point, she manages to tell Zach that she loves him too. After saying his goodbyes, Zach shoots her in the head, causing her to tumble down the ravine, where she finally dies. Shortly after, he heads to Mr. Levine's house, where he finally reunites with his parents along with Kyle and Erica. He then tells Kyle that he mustered the courage to get the job done, but now they have to leave and find a safer place to stay. Suddenly, the electricity comes back, and the report on TV announces that everything has gone back to normal. Days later, Zach goes to the cemetery and places Beth's scarf on her grave. He also puts a chess piece on Maury's before returning to the car with his mom and Erica. Zach's mother makes him sit in the back seat where Erica is. He then invites Erica for dinner, making Zach's mother smile as he's finally moving on from Beth.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.